This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Keep your wellness routine going strong all summer. Kachava's new travel packs help you stick to your daily ritual even when you're on the go. Just one packet of Kachava's all-in-one nutrition shake provides complete nutrition wherever you are, with 25 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, greens, adaptogens, and more. Simplify your daily ritual. Go to Kachava.com and use code PODCAST for 15% off. That's KACHAVA.com, code PODCAST.
Welcome to Unbiased Science, where we bring scientific method to the madness. I'm your host, Dr. Jess Steyer. You'll notice that Dr. Sarah Scheinman is not joining me today. I am instead joined by not one, not two, but 3 pediatricians. My co-host for the day is going to be Dr. David Higgins, who is, actually, I'll read his bio in just a second, but he is just a brilliant pediatrician and infectious disease specialist who I am so honored is a regular contributor to Unbiased Science. I will kick things off to let you know that I have the flu. Flu B has hit my household quite hard, so I am feeling a little bit like Bernie in Weekend at Bernie's. So I might be leaning on my co-host a bit more than usual today. So let me just briefly introduce Dr. David Higgins to you. It is an impressive bio that does not do all of his experience justice. But Dr. David Higgins is a pediatrician and public health physician based in Colorado whose work focuses on vaccine delivery, communication, and immunization policy. He studies how vaccines are delivered in real-world pediatric practice and how conversations, health systems, and public messaging shape vaccine decisions. He serves in leadership roles with the American Academy of Pediatrics and Immunize Colorado, and is a frequent contributor to Unbiased Science. His writing and commentary have appeared in major national outlets where he translates complex vaccine science and policy into clear, accessible information. David, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks, Jess. No, it's such a pleasure to co-host this with you. And today, I want to be here as a pediatrician. As a pediatrician who still takes care of kids and families and loves doing that. So it's a pleasure to be here.
And so David and I co-authored a report that we pushed out through the nonprofit, the Center for Unbiased Science and Health, about a couple of months ago at this point. We'll reshare the link to our show notes. But basically, we've heard people say that pediatricians are getting paid big dollars to push vaccines onto families. And so the response from pediatricians and from the public health communities has consistently been, no, that's not the case. But we wanted to take it a step further and sort of, show the math, show the numbers. And so that's what we did in our report. And in just a second, I'll ask David to highlight some of the key takeaways from that report. But in addition to the numbers, we thought it was very important to speak to real pediatricians who are doing this work on the ground and hear about how things have played out in their practices. So we are joined today by 2 other pediatricians, Dr. Sarah Goza and Dr. Sean Jones-Jobst, who are here to talk to us about how things have played out with their practice. All right, David, can you walk us through a little bit what we did in this report and some key findings?
Yeah. So, this narrative that pediatricians are just making huge profits off vaccines, well, it's actively eroding trust. And when parents here follow the money and start questioning their pediatrician instead of questioning maybe an influencer on TikTok, that just destroys the relationship with pediatricians. But we wanted to follow the actual money, not just the rhetoric, right? And so we took months. I mean, I don't even remember how long this project took, maybe 6-9 months. And we really dug into all of the data, the economics, the insurers, how it varies by state, how it varies by type of practice, all of these things. Like we wanted to really do justice to this question. And what we found was the complete opposite of the narrative. So a couple of highlights that I want to point out, and then I really want to center this on the experience of the incredible pediatricians that we have here today. But first, there is a myth that pharma pays pediatricians. That is just full stop, not true. It is illegal. That is not something that happens. Pharma is not out there paying pediatricians to give vaccines. There are these viral myths about pediatricians receiving enormous bonuses for vaccinating. And when we looked into it, we saw this also is not true. Sometimes there are quality programs that insurers give to pediatricians to say, hey, you're providing great quality care to your patients. And those programs sometimes have multiple different things that pediatricians are graded on. One of them might be vaccines. Even though that's the case, even if they were to get a small incentive for providing good quality care, it's tiny. Okay. And then we got into the actual nitty-gritty details. And we will link to not only our Substack post, but also the big brief where we got into the details of how does a practice give vaccines to kids, all the way from the ordering and what that looks like to the storage, to the really complex regulations around vaccines and how you store them and how you keep them safe until they make it to a patient, and then how they get reimbursed. And the bottom line is that it's incredibly complicated. And the reality is that 1 in 4 pediatricians have considered stopping providing some vaccines, not because they doubt the science, not because they don't think it's good for their patients, but because the math just simply doesn't work for them. They are taking a loss and aren't able to sustain their practice and the great care that they're delivering while giving vaccines. So the bottom line from what the extensive research that we did over months was that this narrative is not true. And in fact, if anything, pediatricians go to extreme lengths to make sure that their patients can get vaccines to keep them healthy.
Thank you, David. I think it's a great time to turn to our 2 other guests. Let's start with Dr. Goza. First, can you just introduce yourself briefly, where you're located, and then tell us, what do you think? What would you say to people who do believe that pediatricians are getting rich off of, quote unquote, pushing vaccines, and what has your experience been?
So I'm a pediatrician in a suburban town south of Atlanta called Fayetteville, Georgia. I've been there for almost 40 years. And so I've been out since 1987. I've been practicing medicine and giving vaccines since then, with a lot of new vaccines that have come into play during my years in practice. And so I also I'm a past president of the American Academy of Pediatrics. I'll throw that in there. So I have a lot of experience with this. Vaccines are the second highest cost we have in our practice beyond employee salaries and healthcare for our employees. And so it is really the second highest cost of anything. And, you don't make it up in payment, because the insurance companies pay you pretty much what they cost, or maybe a little bit above that. And just like David said, we have the ordering, the storing, the refrigerators you have to have, the thermometers that monitor those temperatures to keep those vaccines safe. And just the headache of all that. If you waste 2 or 3 vaccines in a month, you don't break even, especially in the more expensive vaccines, which I think is why you see some practices saying they're not going to give some of those vaccines. that are more expensive. And, you know, the quality incentives we get are very minimum. I wish they were bigger, but they're not. They're very minimum, especially in pediatrics. My practice is over 50% Medicaid. And so we do have the Vaccines for Children program that actually pays for those vaccines. So that helps us stay solvent. But a lot of people don't do vaccines for children because it's very much of a regulatory thing with the government where you have to jump through a lot of hoops to do that. And so I think y'all's paper is spot on, is that, pediatricians do this because we believe vaccines save lives. We do not do it for the financial part of it. We do it because vaccines do save lives.
So I'm going to actually ask Dr. Jones the same question, but just a quick follow-up for you, Dr. Goza, if I can. You mentioned, I think you used the phrase waste vaccines. What does that mean? When would that happen?
So if you have a patient who says they want the vaccine to us, to the doctors, and then the nurse goes in and the patient says, oh, no, I don't want that one. Or I've changed my mind, I don't want that vaccine. That's a wasted vaccine because you can't put it back in the vial. If the nurses drop one and it breaks, then you can't use that vaccine. Or if we have a temperature variance on our refrigerator, some of the vaccines can be wasted that way, especially if there's a disaster happening, a tornado or a hurricane comes through and your vaccines are all wasted. So, which is catastrophic to practices.
So, Dr. Jones, same question to you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you practice, and what your experience has been with navigating offering vaccines to your patients?
Sure. I'm a general pediatrician in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I've been in practice almost 22 years. The whole time here in this practice in Lincoln, my practice is in a suburban area, but it's right on the edge of town, and our practice serves a pretty big both rural footprint and then a small urban area in downtown Lincoln. And so we have kind of a broad population as far as diversity is concerned within our area. And I also serve in a leadership role at the AAP. And I can tell you that from our perspective, from a financial perspective, the report is spot on. I went ahead and looked at our numbers from last year, and the cost of our commercial vaccine. So this did not include the vaccine costs associated with refrigeration, storage, administration. This is just solely the cost of our commercial vaccine, was 15% of our budget. And it was our second highest cost, second only to physician and APP and psychologist salaries. It was over 2 times more cost than our occupancy expenses. And so that kind of gives you a perspective of how much we spent. And that's only on our commercial vaccine. We also give VFC vaccine. Our population is about 30% Medicaid and VFC eligible. And those vaccines, we don't get any funds to cover the storage or the administration. We get a small administration fee, but it doesn't cover the costs of storage. We do it because it's the right thing to do. I think my practice administrator, who has been with us for a very, very long time and has come around to being more patient-focused than business-focused, but I can guarantee you that if I said, oh, we don't have to do vaccines anymore, you would say, what? Oh, that's going to be so much easier from a financial standpoint, So obviously we don't think that way. We want to take care of kids. We want to do the best thing possible, and we want to keep them healthy and our communities healthy. And so that's why we choose to do it, even though it is not a moneymaker for the practice.
So David, Dr. Higgins, you practice in a different area, perhaps serve a different demographic. Maybe can you answer the question as well, and what your experience has been?
Yeah, so, I've had the opportunity over my career so far to practice in several different settings. So I practiced in a suburban private practice. I practiced up in Montana, where it was a part of a larger health system. My clinic was part of a larger system up there. And now I practice at the Children's Hospital here in Colorado. And I've seen how each practice has navigated this. And across all 3 of those different settings, the same story holds true. The giving vaccines and providing vaccines, it's complex. And it comes with a lot of challenges that the practice or the health system has to overcome in order to provide those vaccines for children. I like what Dr. Jones just said. I mean, it's true. It would be a lot easier as far as the administration, as far as the finances, all of those things, if we didn't have to give vaccines. But of course, that's absolutely ridiculous to us in pediatrics because we know how important they are for the health of the kids that we care for and their families and our communities. And so we are going to overcome those barriers and those burdens that in order to offer this to our patients. And I've seen that across multiple different settings and in different states.
So, Dr. Goza and Dr. Jones, you both spoke with one of our team members, Jen Bordenick, in preparation for the report, and you shared some of your stories, and we included those, qualitative quotes in the actual report. If I'm not mistaken, Dr. Goza, I believe you shared some stories about, vaccine preventable illnesses that you've seen in your practice. I believe there was a story about a teenager who nearly died of meningitis. And was it your own mother, if I'm not mistaken, who was exposed to rubella when pregnant with you? Just wondering, can you share a little bit about those stories?
Sure, I'd love to. So early in my practice, we used to do spinal taps in my office because we did not have a hospital in our community. I said we were suburban, but at that point in time, we were probably more rural. And we did have an urgent care in a lab. And the lab lady would run my spinal fluids for me, and I would send them with the patient after giving them a dose of antibiotic because it was about an hour to the nearest pediatric hospital. And so I had a teenage patient come in, and she had had headache and neck pain for about 2 days and a fever. And she definitely had a stiff neck. But when I told her I needed to do a spinal tap, she looked at me like, "You're not doing that to me." And I said, "Well, if you can touch your chin to your neck and lean your head all the way back, I won't do it." And she could not do it. So we set her up and got the spinal tap done. And by the time we were ready to do the spinal tap, she was actually non-responsive. She was not even talking anymore. And so we got the spinal tap, got some antibiotic in her, and sent her straight to the hospital. And her dad to this day still credits me with saving her life. And she's now a mother of her own. She's a mother herself. And so, it can happen. I mean, she walked into my office and didn't look that bad. And within probably 45 minutes to an hour, she was not talking anymore. And that's how fast meningitis can hit. And now we have Haemophilus and pneumococcal vaccines and meningococcal that can save people from those illnesses. I use that story a lot with patients to try to explain to them how fast children can get sick and how fast they can go downhill. I had a second patient who at 6 weeks of age had to have a heart transplant. So he was delayed with his vaccines, but at the time that he developed meningitis, he had had his vaccines, including his pneumococcal, but it was pneumococcal, it wasn't pneumococcal 20, it was probably pneumococcal 9 valent at the time. And he was actually seeing his pulmonologist because he was wheezing. And
with the new MyLowe's Pro Rewards American Express card, earn 3 points per dollar spent on Lowe's qualifying purchases for the first 6 months after card account opening. Plus, save 5% every day on eligible purchases at Lowe's and earn points on eligible purchases everywhere else Amex is accepted. Card members get more at Lowe's. Subject to credit approval. 5% can't be combined with any other offer. Exclusions and restrictions apply. Points subject to loyalty terms at Lowe's.com/terms and credit reward terms at Synchrony.com/MLPRA-terms. Visit Lowe's.com/business credit.
Had a fever. And he started seizing in the pulmonologist office with pneumococcal meningitis. And to this day, he's now 15. And or teenager, I don't know, he may be 15. Anyway, he seizes all the time. He's non-responsive. His brain was totally devastated by the pneumococcal meningitis. And today, I think the pneumococcal 20 probably hopefully he would have responded to it. He was immunosuppressed because of his heart transplant, but he did have some reactivity. And so that's what pneumococcal meningitis can do to you. And we don't see it anymore. We don't talk about it very much anymore because it's a very rare instance. I actually asked my new partner how many spinal taps she did in residence. She says, "Well, 2, but only 1 was successful." And I probably did hundreds of spinal taps. I did them in my office, It was just like, you did them. And the third story is that my mother was pregnant with me, she was exposed to rubella. And so, because MMR didn't exist in whatever year I was born, long time ago. Anyway, and so my mother's doctor was very concerned as to what I was going to look like when I was born. I had to be delivered early for other reasons, but luckily I came out okay. I was not a rubella exposed. I didn't have any signs or symptoms of rubella. But if we have a generation of children not vaccinated with MMR, we're going to have a generation of mothers who, if they're exposed to rubella, then can have babies with problems that we have not seen since the 1960s.
Wow. Dr. Jones, I'm wondering how over time have you seen any changes in vaccine hesitancy or likelihood to vaccinate in your practice, or certain questions cropping up more than they did previously, and how do you handle that?
Yeah, I think we've seen waves. There were certainly waves early in my career where there was some public figures, celebrities who started to question both the necessity of vaccines and the safety of vaccines. And over time, I think people started to learn that those people weren't experts and they needed to trust their pediatrician and the authorities, and we saw that improve. I will say the last couple years, it's been hard, especially the last year in particular. I have families who have come into my office who have always vaccinated, have never questioned it, and now aren't sure. They're nervous. They feel scared. They wonder if they made a mistake before. Maybe they should have questioned it and they didn't. Are there people who know things that they don't know, that I don't know? And so there's a lot more education and effort and time that has to go into going through exactly why we're doing the vaccines. And unfortunately, some of the time is spent discrediting things that they've heard online that are absolutely not true. And that's time in the office that I could have spent educating them about something else, like nutrition or exercise or other things they could be doing to help their child with behavioral issues that they might be having or frustrations that they're having with school. So there's, limited resources, and one of the biggest resources that's limited is time. And so trying to discredit or debunk things that they've either seen on TikTok or seen on Facebook or seen on Instagram or heard from federal officials, so that are just simply not true, is using up our valuable healthcare resource and our time with patients.
A question for you, David. So there's this term that we're hearing a lot more these days, shared clinical decision making. Can you explain, well, first of all, why are we talking about this more now? And what does that mean? How does that translate to clinical practice?
Yeah, so we're hearing a lot more about this term in the moment because it all of a sudden went into the national spotlight when the CDC changed some of their recommendations in January and changed some recommendations to this thing that probably most people had never heard of called shared clinical decision making. Now, on its surface, that sounds like something we do all the time, and it is. Look, we share in decision making with parents every single day in clinic about all sorts of health decisions like vaccines. Okay, so I want to make that really clear up front. We have always shared in decisions. It is so, so important to us as pediatricians that families feel like they are making the best decision for their children. And it's our role to help walk them through that. And that includes making it really clear when something that has benefits that far, far outweigh the risks. Okay. What we're hearing more and more about now is this term shared clinical decision making. Now, the reality is, in medicine, we used to reserve that term for cases where the decision, the best path forward was really not clear. We really don't have good evidence about whether choice A is better than choice B. And in those cases, what we do is we talk with families and we say, hey, here's choice A and B. Let's talk through the risks and benefits of these choices. And there's not necessarily one that really has proven, the weight of evidence is clear that one's better than the other. With vaccines, we continue to share in the decision-making with parents while also recognizing that the choice to vaccinate with the vaccines that are recommended by organizations like the AAP, the benefits far outweigh the risks for children, right? And look, with parents, we have the same goal as the parents do. We both want their children to be healthy, and we want them to thrive, right? And all of our conversations need to start from that shared agreement that that's what we both want. Even the parent that comes in with all the questions and all the concerns, honestly, I have a lot of empathy for those parents in this moment because they're just being blasted with information. Whether they go looking for it or not, they're scrolling through their social media feed and it just comes up. And so it's natural as a parent to ask questions. That means you're being a good parent. Look, being a parent is kind of anxiety provoking, right? That's just the reality. And so partnering with them through that is something that we've always done and something that we are going to continue to do no matter what the label is that's put on the national vaccine recommendation.
I love that you said that it's perfectly normal and encouraged for parents to ask questions. And something that we say all the time at Unbiased is, the parent who chooses not to vaccinate their child, of course, they think that they're doing the best for their child. They're just a product of their information ecosystem. And I think it's hard for those of us who live in the health science and clinical medicine worlds to fathom that because the information that we see, right, it's like, oh my goodness, it's written on the wall. The evidence is so clear. It's so strong. But other people are seeing the exact opposite. Their algorithms continue to serve up that vaccines are bad or dangerous or that pediatricians are, getting these fancy bonuses to push them. So something I see a lot when I go on my Facebook parent groups, the mom groups that I'm a part of, is at least once a week, I'll see any recommendations for a holistic pediatrician or a pediatrician who does not push vaccines. I cringe when I see this, and I'm curious, and feel free to jump in if anyone has any thoughts. Like, what are your thoughts when you see something like this, and how might you respond to a parent who puts that request out to the universe?
I'll jump in. I mean, I'm my kids I have one that's about to graduate, but it wasn't very long ago that I was a part of some of those mom groups, and it's hard to see that. And I think the reality is really, what does that mean, push vaccines, right? My job as a pediatrician is to encourage families to do the things that are going to keep their kids healthy and ensure that they are successful in life, and to provide the things that I know are going to prevent them from becoming ill and also keep their health ongoing, right? So I want to prevent illness and I also want to maintain health. And so that is why I encourage families to vaccinate. And I think what the question I always ask is, what does that mean, push vaccines? Does it mean I'm going to force your child to have a vaccine? We don't force children or parents to do anything in our practice. But it does mean that every time you come in, we're going to talk about what the risks and the benefits are of the vaccine, because that's my job, is to make sure that you have the knowledge that you need to make a good decision for your child. And so if they mean a pediatrician that's just going to ask them if they want it and just walk away if they don't and not say anything, I can't do that, because I wouldn't be doing the right thing for their child. And that's my job. My job is to take really, really good care of their child just like they want to.
So, one thing that we haven't talked about yet is sometimes the economics of offering vaccines in a pediatric practice is so challenging that some practices actually consider closing. I think, David, you might have mentioned this at the beginning. Dr. Goza, have you ever seen that happen? Have you ever seen a practice close due to the challenges of, maintaining a pediatric practice?
We've recently had several practices in the Metro Atlanta, Georgia area that have closed suddenly. They were there, and then we've had patients calling us saying they can't get anybody to answer the phones and they can't get their records, and the office just closed. Some of that was due to aging of pediatricians. I think, and as we've aged, and the vaccine issue has become such really a problem for a lot of pediatricians. I mean, it is more time consuming, as Dr. Jones said. It is more, of a lot of that. There's just some of that feeling like I can't do this anymore. I get tired of talking about it day in and day out. And as they were older, their practices, they couldn't sell them. They couldn't find pediatricians to join them, and so they have closed for that reason, probably. But I think they're feeling that the idea of closing is more palatable to them to then continue to practice and not being able to find somebody to take the practice over eventually anyway. And so, I think it's a side effect. It's one of the pressures that's bringing older pediatricians to just close their practices.
Wow.
And, Jess, can I jump in here and just say, this is what is so dangerous and harmful about this narrative. Pediatricians, they pass up opportunities to take different career trajectories that are going to make a lot more money. We do not go into pediatrics to make large profits. We go into pediatrics because we care about kids. We love kids and we want to see them healthy. We want to see them thriving. And so the entire narrative gets at our motivation, as if we are doing these things to pad our wallets, when in reality, kind of our entire career, all of our career choices have gone down a path knowing we are going to make less and still work really hard to take care of kids because we want to see kids healthy. We want to see them thriving.
One of the saddest things that we see at Unbiased, we've been getting these messages from medical students who said that they originally thought that they were going to go into pediatrics, and now they're rethinking it given the narrative, the discourse. And so I think that's just awful because we need pediatricians. And Dr. Goza, as you said, even for my kids, it was challenging to find a pediatrician who could accept patients. So it seems like this is really having an impact on the practice of pediatrics. We're going to wrap up. Does anyone have any final thoughts or something that we haven't said yet that you think is important for our audience to know?
So, Jess, I would just like to respond to that is that pediatrics is still the best job ever. I love what I do. I'm retirement age and I'm dragging my feet on retirement. My friends are all like, why are you not retiring? And it's just because of what David said. It's about the kids. They are my North Star. That's why I do what I do. That's why I encourage vaccines. That's why, my patients whose children I'm now seeing say I'm old school and they like it because I'm old school. And I'm like, yes, I am old school. I am old, that's for sure. And anyway, I can't say it enough, and I hope that people that are in medical school will hear that from all of us as pediatricians, is that we do it because we love what we do. And even these people that are closing their practices, it's not without a lot of angst. They don't want to do it, but they're just at that point in time in their lives where they feel like they have to.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. I think the reality is one of the reasons I chose pediatrics is I could see in our healthcare system when I was a medical student in the 1990s that there was not enough emphasis on funding adequate and appropriate healthcare services for kids. Our healthcare system really does not focus on what children need. It really is more focused on the adult population. And the best thing that I could do to make a difference in that way was to become a pediatrician. I can't expect anybody else to emphasize the importance of kids if I'm not doing it myself. And I think that's what we all should be doing. And I hope that there are some idealistic medical students out there, just like I was when I was in medical school. And now in the 21st century, they will choose pediatrics as well.
Oh my God, I don't know if it's the flu or what's going on, but I'm near tears over here. I don't know if you're watching on YouTube. I just have to say, my very best friend in the world, Ashley, is a pediatrician. I have the utmost respect for pediatricians. I refer to you all as the Mr. Rogers of medicine. There is no question that you're doing this for the love of children, protecting children and keeping our children's happy and healthy. So thank you all so much for what you do. Dr. Sean Jones, Dr. Sarah Goza, and of course, the amazing Dr. David Higgins. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to our listeners. We hoped you learned a thing or two. We will be back next week. Sarah will be back with me. Hopefully, I will not have the flu. And check us out next time for your trusted source for no nonsense, just science.